nationally connected.
They've acknowledged that there was an error and they're correcting it. And I would have asked the same thing of the Biden administration. I don't think anyone should have lost their job over that.
Careless or classified? The group chat leak on Capitol Hill and why intelligence chiefs are playing down the oversight. Plus, artificial dyes out. The state now cracking down on certain additives in publicly funded food. And then consumer confidence dwindles as food prices and labor expectations head in different directions. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm TD Gatton. Thank you for joining us. President Donald Trump's National Intelligence Team sitting before Congress today to discuss the biggest security threats facing the country. The biggest story wasn't border security. It wasn't fentanyl overdoses or terror threats, but rather military attack plans mistakenly leaked to a journalist on a signal thread.
Senator, I don't want to get into the specifics.
Ma'am, were you on? You're not going to be willing to address. So you're not. Are you denying? Matt, will you answer my question, ma'am? You were not TG on this group chat.
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you refuse to acknowledge whether you were on this group chat.
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics.
Why are you?
National correspondent Matt Gelka joins us with more on today's hearing and how a high-level group chat discussed strikes on terrorist targets without knowing they had inadvertently invited a national political journalist into the conversation.
Did you participate in the group chat?
Both Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe denied classified information was shared in a high-level group chat discussing military strikes in Yemen. A journalist for The Atlantic was mistakenly added to the chat on the encrypted messaging app Signal and reported that details of the attack were discussed before it happened. Ratcliffe maintained that Signal is approved to use for work.
My communications, to be clear, in a Signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
Well, we will make that determination, because if it's not classified, share the text with the committee.
Both intelligence officials, along with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, were in the chat, among others. The chat was set up by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and his account added the reporter.
I don't think he should apologize. I think he's doing his best. It's equipment and technology that's not perfect, and probably he won't be using it again.
There's a lot of journalists in this city who have made big names for themselves, making up lies about this president, whether it's the Russia hoax or making up lies about Gold Star families, and this one in particular I've never met, don't know, never communicated with.
Hegseth reportedly shared specific details of the strike, according to the Atlantic article, and Democrats are demanding accountability.
Director Ratcliffe, this was a huge mistake, correct?
No.
That wasn't a huge mistake?
Well, I think they characterized
this is
it as
an
a
embarrassment.
mistake.
The top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner, called for both Waltz and Hegseth to resign. The House Intelligence Committee is set to grill Intel officials on Wednesday.
Is the White House, Matt, making any changes with how top officials communicate going forward?
Well, there are no firm policy changes just yet, but the president did say they would be looking into it as they review what went wrong with the Signal messaging app. And Trump also said he prefers the most important and sensitive conversations to happen in person, but sometimes that's not always possible.
Matt Gelka reporting tonight from the Capitol. Thank you.
First of all, what did we agree on? That there can be silence at sea and free navigation.
Russia says it's willing to sign on to a Black Sea maritime ceasefire deal, but only if the U.S. orders Ukrainian President Zelensky to respect it. The development marks a possible step towards a full ceasefire with Ukraine. The White House says the two countries also agreed to stop attacking energy infrastructure. U.S. officials just finished negotiations in Saudi Arabia for a phased ceasefire. Several sticking points remain. Vice President J.D. Vance plans to join his wife, Second Lady Usha Vance, on her trip to Greenland on Friday. Vance posted in a video on X today that he and President Trump want to reinvigorate the security of the people of Greenland to help protect the entire world. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz also plans to visit the Arctic island this week. New details: beginning on August 1st of this year, 7 artificial food dyes will be banned from food products sold in West Virginia. Listed right here, Governor Patrick Morrisey signed that bill into law that also eliminates the dyes from drugs sold in the state, but that cutoff date isn't until January of 2028. This comes days after Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin signed a bill banning artificial dyes from Virginia public school lunches. D.C. police have now identified 2 suspects wanted for defacing Teslas earlier this month. Police say the suspects were caught on surveillance cameras in 2 separate incidents, writing, quote, political hate speech on the vehicles. Police believe the male suspect was also responsible for similar offenses around the city in the following days. A $1,000 reward is being offered for any information that leads to an arrest. Luigi Mangioni's lawyers want him to have access to a laptop in prison for legal purposes only. They say Mangioni could review thousands of hours of video and 15,000 plus pages of documents. The lawyers say there aren't enough visiting hours for him to view all the evidence on their laptops. The 26-year-old is accused of killing the CEO of United Healthcare in December. And continuing coverage, a second Columbia University student who's facing possible deportation cannot be detained by the feds. A Manhattan federal judge temporarily blocked immigration authorities from detaining Yunseo Chung, a South Korean national in the U.S. on a green card. Unlike Columbia grad student Mahmoud Khalil, Chung is not in custody. She was arrested following an on-campus demonstration back on March 5th. Chung has been suspended from the university following her arrest. Meantime, on Capitol Hill, House Democrats gathered in support of Mahmoud Khalil and asked for his release. They say despite not being a citizen, he's still guaranteed the right to free speech, and his arrest violates the First Amendment.
The detention and threatened deportation of Mahmoud is illegal and is a direct assault on our constitutional rights to due process, freedom of speech, a right to protest, and on dissent itself.
The administration maintains Mahmoud Khalil is facing deportation not because of speech, but for actions and statements supporting Hamas. The Social Security Administration is speeding up cuts to phone services at the White House's request. Axios now citing a conversation between the agency's acting commissioner and advocates of the program yesterday. Now, according to former SAS staff, the changes will strain this system. They also say eliminating the service could increase fraud. President Trump's nominee to lead the Social Security Administration says it's all part of a plan to root out waste and abuse.
President Trump was elected by the American people to make life better for Americans. And he has made protecting and preserving Social Security an important part of his vision.
People whose budgets rely solely on Social Security grow more fearful by the day that their benefits will be cut. The National News Desk, Denise Whitaker, spoke with some of them about their fears.
I think people are terrified that that's going to go away. It's just not going to be there.
The Trump administration said it will not cut Social Security in one of its fact checks, but this crowd does not believe that.
I'm ready to go to get mine on Wednesday, and it better hit the bank.
Rumors right now point to payments not going out as scheduled due to actions by the president's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, working to stop fraud within the system.
Yeah, there's a smidge bit of fraud, but in no way, shape, and form does this really justify the all-out attack on Social Security. Less than 1% of payments by Social Security are fraudulently accessed.
That 1% would equal about $13 billion a year, but the White House says the Social Security Administration sent about $72 billion in improper payments out in recent years. That's an average of just $9 billion annually.
Don't wait for it to hurt until you get out here.
The call to action is to send the message that cuts are unacceptable to every official who will listen.
I call Patty Murray's office. I call Maria Cantwell's office. I leave my messages, and at least you feel like you're doing something. And I know they're getting the message because I have heard back from both of them.
It takes heavy lifting. It takes vigilance. Help our elected officials with an overwhelming push to do what we elected them to do, represent the people.
Rachel Kallner said their research proves phone calls are the most effective way to deliver those messages.
Coming up, uncontained wildfires threaten homes in the Carolinas, the mad dash to protect property. Then the popular trucks being recalled for suddenly shifting gears while people are driving. Then the grave new threat uncovered in the investigation into toxic firefighter uniforms. We'll be right back. Wildfires now burning out of control for a third day in the Carolinas. Evacuation orders are still in effect right now. South Carolina remains under a state of emergency with 2 fires in Pickens and Greenville counties right now, still 0% contained. In Polk County, North Carolina, 2 large fires have burned over 6,000 acres with 0% containment. Debris from Hurricane Helene is helping fuel those flames. Residents are preparing for what could come next. One woman says she's been moving leaves away from her rental property.
The hope is that we, eliminate as much of the fuel for the fire as possible, and that hopefully it doesn't take the buildings. You becomes a part of you. Even when it's a business, you grow to love a space.
Tonight in Washington, the lawsuits are piling up. 65 days in office, and President Trump is now facing at least 137 legal challenges to his actions. Now a face-off between those accusing the White House of massive overreach and those who say, quote, activist judges are standing in the way of his priorities. Here's the National News Desk, Christine Frizzell.
I'm going to sign this one.
In response to the abundance of executive orders signed by President Donald Trump in just 2 months, an abundance of lawsuits challenging what he views as his presidential power. In many cases, they're filed by Democrats with federal judges they see as like-minded, a practice that's been used by both parties.
Activist judges are a serious threat to our system. It has increased in number. It has increased in intensity. This is not the way the system is supposed to work.
The system now being challenged in new legislation called No Rogue Rulings Act, which seeks to limit the authority of federal judges to impose nationwide injunctions.
Congress is saying when a federal judge issues an injunction that covers the whole country, that's too broad a power for one judge to have. A judge should only have the power where the state that he is located in.
Lawsuits include challenges to the widespread firing of federal workers and dismantling of agencies created by Congress, the blocking of Trump's executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship, and his use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport 261 migrants he calls criminals without due process, which critics say interferes with U.S. national security.
The Constitution gives the president the power to make the judgments about how we deal with foreign nationals when we are animated by national security concerns. It's his call, not a district court judge's call.
But others argue there is a valid reason for the long list of lawsuits, that Trump has time and time again pushed the limits of presidential power.
On the 250th anniversary of our overthrow of a king, Congress needs to step in and say that the presidency has become too powerful. We've got to look at the abuse of emergency authorities, the abuse of tariff authorities, the abuse of domestic law enforcement authorities.
President Donald Trump laying bare the reality that democracy can be messy, raising questions about the Constitution and our laws nearly every day. Constitutional experts say the answers to many of them will end up being determined by the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
Many Americans are nervous about the economy, as reflected in a new report from the Conference Board. Consumer confidence dropped for the fourth month in a row from 100.1 to 92.9. This was especially driven by pessimism about future employment prospects. That being said, Americans' views of the current job market improved slightly. A massive Ford recall involving more than 1 million F-150 trucks. Right now, federal safety regulators are investigating 138 consumer complaints, citing an issue with transmission shifting to a lower gear without warning, causing rapid deceleration. Some have said the spontaneous downshift caused their rear wheels to temporarily lock up or skid out. Officials say all 138 complaints came from 2015 to 2017 F-150 owners. Woolite is pulling more than 16,000 bottles of its Delicates laundry detergent over potential bacteria exposure. According to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, the product contains a species of bacteria often found in soil and water. Woolite says the bottles were sold only on Amazon this past January. Customers should stop use immediately and contact Woolite's parent company for a refund. 23andMe customers are having trouble deleting their data because of an influx of website traffic, according to the Wall Street Journal. Many users faced login delays or error messages yesterday and today. And by yesterday evening, a chatbot was telling people to try again later. The genetic testing company went bankrupt on Sunday. Many customers are now worried about what will happen to their data. And thousands of residents in Washington state are being sent fraudulent text messages claiming they owe money to the state for unpaid tolls. WashDOT says the messages are from someone trying to get residents' bank and credit card information and that they do not send text messages.
I've gotten multiple text messages. It looks legit, like you would think that it was real. But then I check my email because I get emails from them, like actual emails, and it's like, you're good to go.
The FBI is now investigating. Officials stress if you get that text, report it as junk to your phone provider. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Virginia with a gun store smash and grab, all caught on camera.
A jarring moment captured on surveillance video in Fairfax County. An allegedly stolen truck rammed into a gun store, masked thieves running in with bags, breaking glass, and helping themselves to as much of the merchandise as they could get.
Let the ages of the two that we apprehended last night sink in a little bit. 16 years old. 16.
Fairfax police announcing the arrest just this afternoon, hours after the brazen break-in happened. In total, authorities say 21 guns were taken. 8 of those are still on the streets, as is a member of the crew allegedly responsible.
Across the volunteer state, charitable organizations such as churches and homeless shelters might be held accountable for the actions of an undocumented immigrant they knowingly house. This bill, by State Senator Brent Taylor and Representative Rusty Grills, says the organizations would be liable for the loss, damages, injury, or death caused by a migrant's crime.
The person that's committed that crime towards, they have a civil right of action against you.
Reverend Enoch Fuzz is the senior pastor of the Corinthian Missionary Baptist Church.
You can't hold anybody liable for the actions of somebody except for the person themselves.
Churches have historically been a sanctuary for migrants.
In a normal year, Canadians heading south for summer means big business for OOB.
In Old Orchard Beach, it's absolutely half the business.
But early indications are this won't be a normal summer.
We've seen some cancellations for sure.
Sean Nicholas and his family own 2 beachside hotels in OOB. 20 to 25% of their guests are Canadians. At many other local hotels and campgrounds, the Canadian numbers are much higher. And as we learned, so are the cancellations. Are they saying why they're canceling?
Not everybody, but it's pretty clear that there's some public unrest, that they don't agree with kind of the U.S.'s worldview at the moment. They're just not behind this administration, I guess, and they want people to know that.
Coming up, the action two firefighters have taken to make uniforms safer for their fellow first responders. We'll be back with that story and much more in 90 seconds. There is a new layer in the fight to protect first responders from cancer and chronic diseases that run rampant in the fire service. Spotlight on America has been reporting on toxic chemicals in the gear that firefighters wear to emergency scenes. But new science shows toxic chemicals in their station uniforms, ones they wear all day, that could make the threat even more grave. Lisa Fletcher reports.
It meant losing the chance for a family they'd always dreamed of.
What was that like for you, wanting to be a dad and then
scientifically linked to cancer and chronic disease? Brian's PFAS levels were 166 times higher than average, but he believes his exposure wasn't limited to the gear he wore to fight fires. He and fellow Virginia firefighter Charlene Beach made a chilling discovery. They tested their everyday station uniforms for dangerous chemicals and found some of them embedded with PFAS, as well as other hazardous materials like heavy metals and brominated flame retardants.
How often is a firefighter in the station uniform?
24 hours.
Your body does not have a way to detox or get rid of these chemicals and things that are lingering in your body. It's just building and building and building until your body goes, I can't deal with it.
But it's also sort of odd that we have to poison somebody before it gets taken out of service.
Dr. Graham Peasley conducted the tests on Brian and Charlene's uniforms. He was the first to discover the toxic chemicals in turnout gear in 2018. His latest research now warning firefighters of this new risk.
What was the most concerning thing that you found in the station wear?
We found some of the ancient flame retardants of brominated flame retardants. Some heavy metals seem to be quite prevalent in some of these materials. And so I think the metals scare me the most.
And Peasley says absorption of those chemicals increases if firefighters leave their uniform on under their firefighting gear.
Everything is affected by heat. And so if that gear was worn under their gear and they perspire more and heating up, their pores may open and that may make more go through the skin.
This is what we made.
Back in Virginia, Brian and Charlene aren't waiting for the industry or laws to protect their brothers and sisters.
We looked at other companies out there that were already in existence to see whether or not we could find PFAS-free, chemical-free stationwear. The answer to that question was no. Nobody was doing it. Nobody was making it.
So they did.
It's better all the way around.
With hopes that new awareness brings a safer future.
And once it gets out there and fire departments actually start reading the research, I think it'll be a game changer, because once you know, you can't hide the fact that you know it, and you have to act.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
And for more on our in-depth investigations into the toxic threats to firefighters, just go to spotlightinvestigates.com. Coming up, the true origin of a new NASA image that scientists call the cosmic tornado. We'll be right back after this. For red light. And that's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight.